Well, let's find out if Labour are willing to operate off a news story. I'm joined now by the Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry. Good to see you this morning, Ms Thornberry. What do you make of all of it? I mean, we have not yet had anything from Downing Street to challenge the detail in the Telegraph report. On that basis, I think you and many others, myself included, are taking it at face value. What do you make of it?
I think when I first heard it, it actually took quite a long time for me to just get over the emotion that I felt, because I thought about Her Majesty the next day and the way in which she was leading the country and behaving in such a thoroughly decent way in which she always does. And she has always, I think, in many ways embodied the suffering that we have had over as a country, whether it was in the Second World War when she was out in the East End, and now when we've had this collective trauma from COVID and the way in which she behaved in such a proper way and a way in which makes us all so proud. And you think of that, and then you compare it with what was going on in Downing Street, where there had been a culture that had been set over the time of the pandemic, where the Prime Minister made it perfectly clear that he was perfectly all right about this. And frankly, we would not have been seeing these parties, not just one party, but two parties in one night, if they really thought that the Prime Minister didn't approve or wouldn't have been all right about it. But the point is that the culture was set by the Prime Minister, his responsibility. And for the only thing that you have heard from Number 10 Downing Street is that their defence was, oh, well, the Prime Minister wasn't there. So what? So what? He is in charge of Downing Street. He is in charge of the government. That is how they were behaving. They were having DJs in their basement. There were grown men playing on swings. They were sending out suitcases for more booze the night before Her Majesty was doing the right thing and having a funeral with a very few people where she was completely on her own because that's what the rules said. She was doing the right thing.
I don't often say it, but I did say it to Damien Hinds this morning. I'd had a degree of sympathy for him, the human sacrifice put up by Downing Street in front of the cameras this morning. But one thing that he did make clear was, in his view, that this would be looked at by Sue Gray. We will need to get that confirmed, I imagine. But between now and the point at which she reports, what more can opposition parties like Labour do to cast any further light on it? Or are you simply just waiting for the Sunday papers?
I tell you what we're waiting for. We're waiting for the Prime Minister to look into his heart and soul and decide whether or not he has a scrap of human decency in him. Because if he does, he will resign. How the hell can he possibly expect to go before Her Majesty again at a weekly audience and be able to look her in the eye and pretend that everything is all right? Because everything is not all right. The one thing he should be saying to Her Majesty is, I am profoundly sorry and I resign. That's what he should do, and it's actually up to him at the moment. Of course, what we're waiting for is we're waiting for Sue Gray's inquiry to come out, and hopefully it will finish, at the end of next week. But the poor woman, she must be right at the end of, doing her inquiry, and then another party turns up.
Do you have faith then in Sue Gray's ability to carry out this inquiry properly? I mean, the one fact that everyone needs to bear in mind when talking about Sue Gray is that she was appointed to head this inquiry by the Prime Minister.
Exactly, and she's a civil servant, and this idea that she's independent or in some way has a quasi-judicial role is obviously not. But we are where we are. I'm a practical, pragmatic politician. At the moment, we have an inquiry going on by Sue Gray. She needs to do everything she can, and staff at Number 10 need to be honest with her and give her access to their phones and their messages and not be wiping their WhatsApp messages, as has been suggested might be happening. We need to make sure that doesn't happen, so she gets full access to all the information, is able to come to some conclusions. Once she has done that, then we would expect the Met to have a look at it, and frankly, if there have been crimes committed, we would expect there to be prosecutions. But in the meantime, the timetable is completely different for the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister can today and should today resign.
Can we talk briefly, though, about Barry Gardiner?
Yes.
And the proximity that, agents of the Chinese intelligence apparatus came to, the front line of opposition politics and all of this. I mean, despite the somewhat czarish beard, I mean, the sense that the allegation is not necessarily that Mr. Gardiner was, some kind of some sort of Chinese Communist Party stooge, but was he well advised in continuing to take such significant sums of money from someone that he was so concerned about he had not one but multiple conversations with the security services?
So I think that you see this woman and she seems to have had access to David Cameron. She seems to have been given an award by Theresa May. And I think that one of the lessons that we learn from this is how easy it is for people to wheedle their way into Westminster politics and to get access to all kinds of figures. And yes, what we shouldn't do is assume that someone else has done the checks. You know, and I think that if she was thought to be a Chinese asset, then clearly it would have been good if the security services had been able to say that in a fairly clear way.
Wouldn't it be best advised not to hire her son then?
No, I don't know what the conversation was between Barry Gardner and the security services, but I'm assuming that if they had told him that she was a Chinese asset, then that would have been it.
It doesn't look like Mr Gardner would be bouncing back to the very front of opposition politics anytime soon, though, will it?
Barry Gardner is a long-standing colleague and comrade of mine.
Indeed. I wonder, just before we let you go, I wonder if we can talk just briefly about Prince Andrew, yes. No longer His Royal Highness, the Duke. What do you make of all of that? I mean, clearly, and this may well go to what we were talking about earlier on, the Queen has an awful lot on her plate at the moment, but that must have been a painful decision. I
can't even imagine what it must be like for her at the moment. I mean, it's just difficult, isn't it? One thing after another after another. But I think that she has been well advised. I think this is the right thing to do. And I think that Prince Andrew has to, you know, in whatever way, make whatever decisions he thinks is right for him, but should do so as a private citizen. But I think probably more than anything else, I think of the potential victims of this ring.
Which I completely get, but is this the point at which, and he has certainly been sidelined from public life for quite some time now, but is this the point at which Prince Andrew disappears into the long grass?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that he's now a private citizen, and we just have to wait and see what happens with this court case. But as I say, we must never lose sight of the victims in this.
Indeed. Emily Thornberry, great to have you in the studio this morning. Thanks for joining us.